From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Wednesday, April 30th, and here are today's headlines. Due to cuts imposed by the Trump administration, thousands of pounds of chicken, pork, turkey, and eggs that were scheduled for delivery to the Vermont Food Bank have been canceled. The federal cuts were made to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Emergency Food Assistance Program. That program provides free food from U.S. farmers to food shelves and meal sites throughout the country. Only meat and egg deliveries have been impacted, says Carrie Stoller with the Vermont Food Bank, but she says there is more demand than supply for those types of foods.
It was probably a significant quantity of the eggs in the charitable food system in Vermont. We're going to come on that truck.
The cancellation impacts deliveries scheduled through August, totaling nearly 400,000 pounds of food. A new report shows Americans are much more likely to want to know if they have Alzheimer's disease before symptoms show up. 9 in 10 of those surveyed said they would take a simple blood test if one was available. Elizabeth Edgerly is a spokesperson with the Alzheimer's Association that produced the report, and she says there are now more treatments available for early Alzheimer's.
Previously, we didn't have as robust a treatment option. People often said they didn't want to know. And so this is a real turnabout and puts us in good position for future treatments coming to market.
Edgerly says 17,000 Vermonters are living with Alzheimer's disease. Governor Phil Scott announced Monday he's appointed a new sheriff in Caledonia County. Brandon Thrailkill of Lyndonville will take over as sheriff immediately, that according to a press release from the governor's office. The previous Caledonia County Sheriff, James Hemmond, died this spring after battling a rare cancer. Thrailkill has been in law enforcement for 13 years. He most recently was the state transportation deputy for the Caledonia County Sheriff's Department. Prior to that, he was a patrol officer at the Lyndonville Police Department. Vermont is teaming with Connecticut and 8 other states on a plan to make energy transmission more reliable and affordable in the long run. The commissioner of Connecticut's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Katie Dykes, says the 9-state collaborative stretches from Maryland to Maine. It'll work with the energy industry to develop technical standards and create more efficient supply chains.
To achieve this, we need to agree on common standards for transmission technologies so that investments across the system are compatible and consistent. Such standardization could lead to more certainty in the supply chain and reduce costs for ratepayers ultimately.
Dyke says the action plan also calls for more projects to increase the transmission infrastructure between the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. Coming up, some lawmakers in Montpelier want heavier taxes levied against second homes owned by Vermonters to help ease the state's housing crisis. But tax code complexities and pushback from other legislators pose significant roadblocks. We get details from Vermont Public's Bob Kinzel and Lola Dufour after this. Vermont has a housing crisis, more vacant houses than almost anywhere in the country, and a K-12 system in financial trouble. For some, one solution might mitigate all 3 problems: a heftier tax on second homes. Vermont Public Education reporter Lola Dufour spoke with politics reporter Bob Kinzel about the perennial debate and whether it will go anywhere this year.
Lola, lawmakers have talked about a second home tax for maybe 30 years. What's making it percolate up this year?
A lot of things. The housing crisis, for one. There's enormous pressure to provide relief to residents who pay into the state's education fund. Plus, there's a lot of anger in communities where second homeowners pay less than residents.
Why does that happen? Why do second homeowners get to pay less than locals in certain municipalities?
That's because the homestead rate, that's the rate that residents pay on their primary home, in each town is pegged to the local school district's per pupil spending. It's variable. But because non-residents can't vote on local budgets, the tax rate they pay isn't pegged to spending. It's uniform across the state. So that means that in some communities where that per pupil spending is relatively high, residents sometimes end up paying a higher rate than those paying non-homestead taxes. That was the case in nearly 30% of Vermont's towns this year, including in Burlington.
So, Lola, why can't lawmakers just make the non-homestead rate higher?
Well, they could, but the problem is that we don't currently have a category just called second homes in our tax code. Our property tax system classifies properties in a binary way. There are primary residences, and then there's everything else. The homestead rate is applied to primary homes, and the non-homestead rate is applied to literally every other kind of property.
So just to be clear, the non-homestead rate is incredibly broad.
Bingo. So if lawmakers wanted to crank the non-homestead rate up to take the pressure off resident homeowners, they would also wind up increasing taxes on Main Street businesses, on rental properties, on farms. And while it's quite politically popular to say you want to raise taxes on second homes, no one wants to raise taxes on deer camps or put added pressure on rents.
Could Vermont create new property classifications?
That's exactly what some Democratic lawmakers want to do. No one is saying, let's impose X surcharge on second homes, at least not yet. But the education reform bill that just passed out of the House might set the stage for that in the future. It would keep the homestead classification and then break up that non-homestead category into three. One for long-term rental properties, one for second homes, and a third, again, for everything that's left over. So you'd go from 2 categories to 4 total.
That bill is now in the Senate. How does that chamber feel about this idea?
Well, Republicans in the Senate don't like it, much like Republicans in the House didn't like it. The tax department has expressed some pretty serious reservations about these new categories. They say that defining a second home is actually pretty tricky. Perhaps surprisingly, there are exceedingly few examples of things that look like a second home tax anywhere in the U.S.
What do Democrats in the Senate make of these objections?
They think they're valid to a point. I spoke to Senator Ann Cummings, who chairs the Tax Writing Senate Finance Committee, and she said, we should absolutely listen to the tax department. But also, the tax department works for the governor, so she takes their objections with a grain of salt. Because Governor Phil Scott is not a huge fan of the idea, although he hasn't said that it's a total non-starter. And ultimately, Cummings says the extent to which this idea will advance depends on what Democrats can negotiate with Scott, whose veto pen now holds a lot of sway in Montpelier.
That was Vermont Public's Lola Dufour, speaking with politics reporter Bob Kinzel. To read more of Lola's reporting, head over to vermontpublic.org. And thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Lexi Krupp, Nina Keck, Liam Elder-Connors, and the New England News Collaborative. Today's episode was edited by Liam Elder-Connors, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. Talk to you tomorrow.
This is Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. You'll see your favorite actors, directors, and comedians on late-night TV shows or YouTube. But what you get with Fresh Air is a deep dive. Spend some quality time with people like Billie Eilish, Questlove, Ariana Grande, Stephen Colbert, and so many more. We ask questions you won't hear asked anywhere else. Listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.